Welcome to a new video inside of my quick tips series. Today it will be mostly focused on Angular because I want to go over several examples where you can use the Angular animations. We will take a look at the beginning for the fade animations. That means if we like opening or deleting elements from the DOM, we can define in Angular what should happen when an element enters or leaves the screen. We also can use this for like lists, for example, where you can then delete elements and it kind of animates it in and out. For this, we will take a look into the fade animation. The HTML is relatively easy. We have here a section with an ngIf, and it kind of like newly have this add fade in out, and we have a logic that says it should show the element or should hide it. So now how all of this stuff works. We have here a trigger. That's, by the way, the naming that we used here. That means every animation starts or is defined with a trigger, what you has to add on the element to tell an Angular that you want to use this animation on the element. And then we have here a state that is void with style opacity 0. That example here, what it tells is that if the element is not visible or get invisible, it should use the opacity 0, and it should make a transition when it comes from void, like from not existence, to a different state. And then it should animate in a 0.3 second interval with the function isInOut to like the styling that we have set it in the CSS. That's the animation for the element. We have here also a trigger with fade in and out with transform. We have a different method for that usage here. What we have here is now an ng4 with several items that we changing if you click on the add button or the remove button, and we're setting on this element that get repeated by the ng4 the animation trigger. And this animation now kind of like make a different kind of approach. We again have a state void that's saying it should be opacity 0, transform in the scale, and we have a transition between the void to like existence with an isOut with 0.4 seconds, and we have a transition here from like existence to void with the isIn function for the styling. And this leads to this kind of scaling animation you can see here, and it allows you to like let the element exist while it like is animated, because normally Angular removes the elements directly from the DOM, but then this animations won't work. That's it about the fade animations. We will like go more deeper in some functionalities later on, but for the base concepts I want to go step by step. Here we have a slide animation. It's very similar like the last animation, and we have here like an animation that like more or less like popping up similarly like an toaster that like adding elements up and should get animated in that kind of way, because this is slide up and down and this is like a slide from left to right. Here we have the slide panel, which we have a toggle for, we have the ng4, but we have now a different animation Here it's slide in, out. It's super similar like the last one. We only changed that in the void it should be transformed translate x minus 100%. And in the other cases, when it comes from the void, it should go to the positioning that normally is initialized by the CSS. And nearly the same for the slide up and down. We have a transform for the translate y, which says that if it disappears, it should use the translate y 20 pixels. And in the other cases, it should kind of go to translate y 0. In the CSS here, we kind of defining the stylings overall, and Angular then understands what should be done to get the animation done. And the last one for that part of the video is the staggered. You are a front-end developer working with Angular. I've created a course for everyone wanting the latest info on Angular 17 and 18. It covers built-in control flow, standalone components, signals, migrating to Angular 17, and building an app from scratch. The course is in the description, because that's also a cool animation if you are interested in making like animations for elements that are repeating with an ng4, and that also works for elements with grid items or like elements in the other axis. Okay. Staggered animations. The HTML looks again very similar. We have here like an ngIf for the show list, and we have a list animation. And here you see we have an ng4 with all our list elements. And also this is the same, only like the animation is different for the grid animation. If we now going into TypeScript, it get a little bit more complicated, but it's more or less similarly the last one. We have here a list animation with a transition from one state to another. That's kind of the definition for this. We want to make an animation when there is like a change in the visibility, for example. And and now we can use this query, can quickly take a look into the description, find one or more inner elements, that's super important, with the current element that is being animated within a sequence. That means here you see like query a newly inserted removed element. Not all elements can be queried via the tokens and so on. And what it says is that if an element inside of the element where we're setting that animation get entered or leave the screen or wants to leave the screen, it should use this animation for them. So what we have here, we have an initial styling. If it enters, it should use opacity 0 and transform translate with 20 pixels. And then we have now the stagger. The stagger is more or less like a possibility if you have multiple elements that it goes over every element in the list that not newly enters the screen. And here you can define like a delay between the different elements. If we make this like a second, we can look later on it. Here we say that the element like one by each other, like kind of like the animation should make the first step, then the next one and so on. And it should here like make 1 second for every element and then start an animation that for that example like needing 0.3 seconds with an ease out, and the result of the animation should be that the translate y goes to 0. And for the leaving, I will also make the 1 seconds, then you can see it relatively good. For the leaving, we kind of saying it should like go back to the styling that we have initially. And if we now take a look into that one, you see that it pops every second one element. And the animation, because it's only 0.3 seconds, kind of is faster than the stagger. What you also can do could also be look nice if, for example, yeah, it was before like the 100. If you're making it the same as the animation time, it kind of making it next by next, but also, and that's what previously was set, we kind of saying that the animation should run like parallelly instead of like next to each other, because the stagger defines when the next element starts and the animation itself is for the stagger not relevant. You can do whatever you want with the animations, but in first place it, looking for the way you're setting here and then making iterating over all elements that newly entering the screen. And for the grid animation, it's similarly, you have an initial styling with a size in that example here, make a stagger, make the scale to 1, opacity to 1, and then if it leaves the screen, it scales to 0.8. And because it's inside of a grid system, it is like next to each other. Alright, then I hope you liked the video and subscribed, and hopefully I see you in the next video.